It is our last Tacky Talk of January 2024 with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy. Hey, Tacky, how are you?
Hey, Joe. I'm a little bit under the weather. Got a bit of a chest cold, so I apologize in advance for any uh, odd sounds coming from my end and my constant desire to reach for my cup for some green tea. So those watching in video will see my my mug a little more often.
That's okay. It seems like everybody has got something this time of year. It's if it's not chest cold, it's a head cold, or certainly COVID is still around. There's the flu. There's just about everything.
Yeah, the CDC's announced last month actually that there's been a rise in respiratory diseases throughout the United States, not necessarily just COVID, but you're right, the common cold, RSV, the flu. I mean, they're all floating around, and the dry weather doesn't help. As we learned during COVID, particles that come out of your breath travel further in dry air. There's not enough humidity to weigh down the particles. And I know it's been raining and snowing, and it's been weird all over the country, and especially throughout Massachusetts with different weather patterns. And also, we're indoors more often. So, increase the chances of respiratory diseases being passed around. And again, we remind folks, I mean, wash your hands. I mean, this is something I'm still marveling we keep talking about. And try to keep your distance from folks you're not feeling well. If you're contagious, definitely stay home. I mean, if you can do remote work because you're sick, then try to. If your boss allows that, that's also part of an employer responsibility to keep your workplace safe. And I masked up when meetings, not because of my safety, but because I didn't want to give it to anybody else.
Right. There's people that gets lost in folks sometimes that the mask is as much, to protect other folks around you as it is to protect you.
Yeah, it's really down to like fast photo ops. I mean, you get it off fast enough for the 15 seconds of photos, and then you put it right back on. And even then, I try to keep, a couple of feet, 3 feet minimum away from folks. And anytime, I had a meeting and had to do some meetings at the State House despite feeling quite poor, my office can maintain a 6 foot plus distance from myself and the people on the couch. So, I let people know, and, people, okay, we have hand sanitizer in the office, and the ability to not get too close, and people fairly comfortable with that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
despite being not great, and I did say, stay home, I have been very careful picking and choosing getting out to things I've already committed to showing up at.
Right. Like you mentioned your social media posts. I saw the pictures with the family of Fred Korematsu.
Yeah, this is one of those things that very rare opportunity. So my colleague Erica Idahoven, who's Japanese, has filed a bill to establish Fred Karamatsu Day on January 30th, which is his birthday. And the governor made a proclamation, and the mayor of Boston, Mayor Wu, made a proclamation declaring Fred Karamatsu Day on January 30th. Now, those who don't know Fred Karamatsu, this goes back to World War II. So some of you may or may not know Executive Order 9066 by FDR. And it basically gives an order to establish internment camps or concentration camps. Is what they really were. For Japanese citizens throughout the country, but especially on the West Coast, and the fear that it would be spies and danger to the United States. And it didn't matter if you were a recent immigrant or a third generation here, you're all interned. And it involved even small children. Some children are born in these concentration camps in the United States because that's what they were. We use internment because it sounds more polite. And revisionist history has been going around again, as we've already seen, regarding a lot of ethnic groups about the fact it was "quote unquote" for your protection, and that there was evidence of the spies, and there was zero evidence, and nothing ever happened. And they lost all their property, they lost all their business. Everything was sold at a dime. In certain industries, especially agricultural industries, basically took their land because the government, made them sell for nothing or took it from them and gave them away. And they spent, upwards of 6 years in these internment camps, and were let out with nothing, no compensation. I think they had like $2 or $5 on a train ticket, and that was that. So this is one of those parts of American history people tend not to want to talk about. And why Fred Hiramatsu was interesting is that him and a couple of folks, were arrested in their early 20s because they were U.S. citizens. They felt like they had the same rights as other U.S. citizens, and they challenged the law. A couple of interesting facts. ACLU National actually told all ACO branches not to take these cases, except for Seattle and San Francisco, who defied the national ACLU's instructions, and those two chapters just went ahead on their own independently. And there's only reason these cases could ever make it on a civil liberties issue because the ACLU would take these cases, which really made no money, to be honest with you. There is no money in civil rights cases. It's not like it's tort litigation where you could get, a class action third of a third kind of scenario and things like that.
Yeah.
So essentially, the long story short, it made its way to Supreme Court, and the U.S. solicitor, tried to make a case that the Japanese were dangerous, and obviously the case is that you got to prove that we're dangerous, otherwise how you can say we're dangerous. And there've been a few years of research by the U.S. military on this. And the U.S. Supreme Court eventually ruled that, in interest of national safety, you can do this. And he was arrested and convicted. The conviction was upheld, and it was sent to the concentration camps. Now, there was actually a documentary on a WGBH website about lies and exposures regarding this entire executive order in the Supreme Court. It turns out there is a smoking gun, and the smoking gun was lies by the U.S. government, especially U.S. military at the time, to fabricate that there's a danger here. I mean, that's actually what caused the overturn of the Korematsu case from the conviction, not the internment camp. People have to keep an eye on the two different things because one is a violation of non-compliance. The other is the legality of the executive order itself. And actually, there was a law put into place to execute said executive order. So the Korematsu case is actually very good law still, sadly, very good law. It's good law to rely on. The conviction was unjustified because the evidence for the conviction was not valid because the U.S. government actually held back information to the Supreme Court. And of course, you can imagine this was not a consensus in the FDR administration. There was a lot of conflict among folks within the administration about this and, continue, frankly, racist beliefs that they were doing this out of the kindness of Japanese Americans and the interest of the public safety. And one of the interesting parts to come out of this is that the Japanese were traitors because of genetic disposition. Essentially, the ethnicity automatically makes them traitors to the country, is actually one of the premises. Now, obviously, some of you hearing this for the very first time, and frankly, some of the stuff I learned as I go along too, because they don't teach this in history books. And honestly, this is not a thing that was heavily taught in law school. But the most fascinating part is that even though Fred Korematsu's case is still good law, no action has ever been done to overturn said case law. And, Karen Korematsu actually is daughter, and it was kind of fascinating because this was a very shameful part, not just against the United States, but also the Japanese people, because Japanese citizens, were branded traitors by their country, put in a concentration camp, and not just them, but the grandparents, great-grandparents, children, and children yet to be born in concentration camps. So, an anti-Japanese sentiment doesn't end with just a war. And it's actually kind of a uniquely Asian problem because, after World War II, Japanese were still looked on poorly. You have Vietnam, Vietnamese were looked on poorly. You have the Chinese communist issue. And then you, of course, have the Chinese government today, which is causing all kinds of issues between the U.S. and other countries. And again, Chinese living here suffer the consequences of that national issue. You don't see, Russians right now being tossed onto the street. I'm sure there's a lot of negative attitude, but it isn't an encouragement by political figures to go after that demographic. It is uniquely among Asian ethnic groups over the decades, many decades. So Karen Korematsu actually found out this story, sadly, as part of a classroom in elementary school during a book report regarding her father's case. Another classmate wrote a book report on it. And so imagine being a child finding out that your father was in a landmark case and was arrested for it, and you found it in elementary school in a book report, and because that's how much shame's associated with this kind of scenario. So So this is a movement nationally at the state level to get Fred Kawamatsu recognized as a civil rights leader because he actually kept continuing to advocate for civil rights, particularly in his later years, to remind folks that this can't happen to you. And Norman Mineta, first Asian Secretary of Commerce and first Secretary of Transportation, first Asian Secretary under the Clinton and George W. Bush administrations, was their 9/11 transportation secretary. And I had the privilege of hearing him speak at actually WGBH for AIP month some years back. And he said that the Muslim internment was actually part of the conversation. Norman Mineta came out of internment camps. So, he basically said, we can't do this. And George W. Bush made the decision in the room saying, no, we can't do this. This is what we did to Norman. Why should we do this to other people? This is not right. So as much as we like to criticize electeds, I'm one of them, and you're welcome to criticize. I think some of these decisions that we make, particularly at the highest levels of government, the presidency, are done in rooms and is actually part of people's real life experiences they share on critical public policy making. If Norman Mineta was not in that room, there's a distinct possibility, and probably a very high one, that there would probably emerge concentration camps for Muslims as a result of 9/11. So one of the things that I hope will come out of this is someone in Congress realizes this is just flat up racist practice, that you put people in essentially prison with no definite timeline of return simply because their ethnicity makes them traitorous. And it's flat out racist. It's really that simple. And, it's like your ethnicity makes you a criminal. So, we did that. And I was actually invited to New England Law School that evening as well, after the Kawamatsu Day at the State House, and gave a talk about racism and Asian racism and how it's not taught in law school well, not just the Kawamatsu cases, but several dozens upon dozens of cases from Asian litigation, would be Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Indian, Syrian, various groups about trying to get civil rights in the United States. We learn about African American civil rights movements in courts, but not Asian American. And I'm sure there's Hispanic ones as well that I probably don't know about, as well as absentee of history of what we talked about before, ethnic studies, and how Asian Americans' contributions to the United States are largely glossed over, including pioneering the positions of being first of people of color to break color barriers. Asians have broke color barriers. We just act like it never happened. So, this is part of the tenets of the lack of ethnic studies in our history books about these challenges. Most people don't realize Norman Mineta was the first Secretary of Asian descent, which didn't happen until the second half of the Clinton administration.
Do you know, have other states had similar proclamations, Tacky, or is Massachusetts the first?
I think there's 13 states that move forward on these proclamations. California's been, I'm trying to think of California as the first one to do Fred Kawamatsu Day. It's somewhat of a new movement nationally to do this. And this country actually, a little trivia, this country actually, on the federal level, highly resists naming days for people. On the state level, not necessarily unusual, but definitely on the federal level. And I'll give you a very simple example. It's called George Washington's birthday. George Washington's birthday was a thing at one time. But at a certain point, Congress decided that, we're not here to put one person at pedestal. It's a country built, a nation built on people. Hence, that's why we have President's Day in February. And just by dumb luck, both Washington and Lincoln's birthday are somewhere in the vicinity of that day, which is part of the reason they picked it. And the only person at the federal holiday level is Martin Luther King, signed into law by Ronald Reagan. And that shows you how significant someone is to the nation's contribution. If you're named holiday at the federal level, it is the only one. And many states, of course, have lots of different holidays for people relevant to the states. Columbus Day is probably the one people knows the most. That's the only one named in Massachusetts. But the federal government historically has a mentality that this is a country built not on one person but on many people.
Interesting. Yeah. So when you say this case is good case law, why do you think it's good case law, Jackie?
Because it's still there. Good case law means it's never been repealed by a court or taken away. As you saw, the Roe case has been diminished because the federal protections are gone, and that's been pulled back. It's dead, revoked, so no longer valid, and shifts back to the state level. It's a state issue. Korematsu case is good law because the government can implement executive orders to do this to other ethnic groups. And the Korematsu case was never an official apology or acknowledge of wrongdoing by any U.S. president. So there were some reparations made to the survivors, which of course took like 4 decades to get. You know how this works, right? No U.S. president and Congress has never issued a formal apology, and no U.S. president has stated that this was a wrong policy. We should never do it again.
Gotcha. Okay. And obviously he has descendants that are now American citizens.
Well, actually, Farrah Korematsu was an American citizen.
Oh,
So yeah, welcome to the challenge of a subconscious bias, right, Joe? It's that the presumption is that Asians are not U.S. citizens. Is actually what you just demonstrated as little subconscious bias problem that I face all the time. Is that that by nature now? I mean, in the case of Japanese, even by World War II, you had 3 generations deep of U.S. citizens. 3 generations deep. They were as much as anybody else. But in the U.S. government position, in the military in particular, was that it's impossible to assimilate them because of their race.
okay.
Impossible assimilation because of genetics. So, yeah, this is like taking, and throw you in with no reason by the federal government claiming you're a public safety hazard. And people also mistakenly believe Hawaii versus Trump was reverse or Korematsu. The court did not reverse Korematsu at all. They considered Hawaii versus Trump a separate issue, but used Korematsu as a basis of public safety to do that. And the conservative end of the court, so to speak, has left it to the fact that history showed the side, not the court. Translation: no, we're not going to address this issue. We're going to leave it as good law and walk away. So, case law that is not repealed or contradicted by an act of the legislature and the executive branch, Congress and the president, or in our case, the state legislature and the governor, is good law. And most people think that, well, you don't have recourse past the courts. You do, actually. It's called not just changing law, but changing the actual constitution. So, it also creates new concepts too. So, some case laws created from new constitutional amendments. Some case laws are overridden by new constitutional amendments.
Yep. Yep. So were members of his family here for that declaration?
Yeah, Karen Korematsu was here. It was very pleasure to meet her. And there's a Korematsu Foundation Association nationally. It was a good day. Unfortunately, I had to skip out about 40 minutes in because I had to go to Newman Law School to give my 1-hour lecture of more like 30 plus minutes plus Q&A. And I did stick around to watch this documentary on WGBH's website called Lies and Deceptions of Executive Order 9066. So I'm not sure I got that right, but I'm sure you guys can just find Executive Order, look it up. And it's about a 45 to 50-minute documentary. And it's mostly based in California because the majority of Japanese and Chinese, Koreans and Indians actually live on the West Coast.
Right.
The nature of geography.
Right. It's just closer. Yeah.
And also, to, again, remind people, I remind every year during AIP month, and I'll do it again in May, is you should watch the documentary called Asian Americans. It's about 8 hours. I'm not sure where it is now. It was on Amazon Prime for a long time. It may be back on WGBH's website for AIP month. It is very long, but it's pretty good, comprehensive, fast move through of Asian Americans in U.S. history for about 120 years, basically most of the modern era. So if you're really interested in getting a quick hit on Asian American contributions, also Asian American civil rights issue to highlight Rio, so to speak. Obviously every segment of that documentary has a much more intriguing story if you dive into it.
Mhm.
But in terms of the quick run through, and then you can see what you'd be interested in looking more into. But I highly recommend that documentary, and of course, the documentary I just saw on Monday.
Okay, very good. Changing topics. I know last week we talked about you meeting with the new DCR commissioner, Brian Arrigo, related to Quincy matters, and that took place, right?
Well, I did. I came in sounding like a frog on the road to do that, and thank the commissioner and their team to come up and see me, and went through a laundry list of issues of constituent interests as well as my own things I see in DCR lands. Obviously, one of the biggest issues is public safety for me. The traffic, the street lights in Queen Shore, Furnish Brook Parkway. I'm very aware of the ones that are now out, and it seems to be more of them going out. Light posts that are still missing. So, those who may not be aware, National Grid control the light posts in Quincy. National Grid transferred those light posts to DCR. And as a result, I asked the commissioner, hey, you guys got capacity. We need these things fixed or replaced or new ones put up. So we got, some pictures to show him of like, look, this is a problem. And if you're not from the city, and even you are from the city, driving in Furnish Brook Parkway can be hazardous because of the lack of lighting. We talked about the general beach maintenance. We had a full-time employee down here for many years, very much in limbo exactly how they're going to staff the beaches in terms of a point of contact. We should not be calling the commissioner directly. We should be able to have a point of contacts locally, as well as work with the Friends organizations, as well as the yacht clubs. Talk about dredging. We discussed this before a few times. And, we got about $1.3 million-ish cash for this project. It's going to cost much more than $1.3 million. But, I got cash on hand here, plus another $2 million earmark bond, plus probably going to need a little bit more money, plus the city has to contribute 20%. Plus there's an engineering, design, RFP. It's very involved. So, but as soon as you get started this project, the better off we are. And like I said, I got money, we to do this. And those of you who've been down there at low tide, especially the boating community, knows that you can't get in and out of the channel except for 2 hours on the other side of high tide. And as I said before, Walsall Beach isn't a naturally formed beach; it's an artificial beach. So the beach sand naturally goes into the bay that fills the channel. And yacht clubs do pay lease agreements to the DCR, but if you can't get your boats in the water to get out and get in, then what's the point of the lease agreement? So the commission understood, and him being a former sales staffer for Senate Ways and Means, as well as being the mayor of Revere, has a very different approach. It's the first time we have an actual executive running DCR in my time. And that's a good thing. And, he's going to look into that situation. We talk about Boy Scout projects. We've had a request for Eagle Scouts to do Eagle Scout projects to do on DCR land. And they really want to continue to encourage and promote that. So, we're going to, help put them in contact with some folks here. Then we talked about the general conditions of the road and the lighting system. We got some concerns about the lights from Fennel Street to C Street. And there's some signalization issues regarding traffic movements. And asked them to take a look at that. And we also asked to look again at Queen Shore Drive regarding kids crossing to Marymount School from there. In other places, the DCR has worked with school departments on essentially cross-jurisdictional issues on allowing the cities and towns to be able to use their own people to help on crossings. DCR has done crossings in some locations when there's not sufficient resources by a city or town. So I asked them to put some time into figuring this out. I did see some crossing folks sometime last summer towards the end of the school year, but something that I'm very interested in. Obviously, some of the traffic impacts from the C Street improvement project will have impact on Queen Drive, even though that they're not participating in the project. And we also talk about the flood control issues. So the area around St. Mary Cemetery is a city project, not a state project, where they created a flood retention area, which was sorely tested, obviously, the last few storms. But Furnish Brook is not solely owned by DCR. It's actually a hodgepodge of city, state, and private property owner easements through the whole thing. It's actually quite complicated. So, and of course, the city has an interest in dredging the Blacks Creek area at the end of Furnace Brook. And obviously, you all know I live at the marsh in front with the estuary in front of me, so I kind of see what happens at this end of the water spectrum. So we talk a lot about that stuff. Um, obviously, we talk about public safety issues. We work well with the state troopers regarding safety on Quincy Drive, and we would like better syncing of conversation sometimes with the DCR and state troopers exactly what's going on, as well as working with the yacht clubs locally, including parking access immediately around the yacht club for things like night watch. Yacht clubs are required to do night watch. Most people don't realize they're actually the ones who keep an eye on the beach in the dead of night and call in problems as you see them. So we talked tangentially about, Squantum Park, not in my district. The Blue Hills, not in my district, they're Bruce's district, but it's hard to talk about Quincy stuff if we don't end up talking about all the Quincy stuff, just to get some ideas what they're thinking. And, they were a little surprised when I, said that you can do crossbow hunting at Squantum Park because it actually meets the hunting laws, the distance from residential property.
Interesting.
Yeah, Mayor from Revere doesn't have this problem.
It's a little more urban in Revere than it is here in Squantum.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a learning curve, and the commission would like to come down at some point and do some eyes-on look about it. So, as constituents have brought up a lot of these concerns, as well as the ones I've personally observed, and it was a good conversation talking with this and many other things, such as their funding issues and staffing issues and staff rotation and the reorganization of the agency, which is desperately needed a reorganization because it's so inefficient. And, but it takes time, and I'm very patient, as you all know. And been in government long enough to know when you have new administration, to sweep out the dead wood, as well as to make it work the way you see it, make it work, isn't something on a snap.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good to know that we're on his radar at least, and we'll get some good conversation going. Hopefully, some results.
Yeah, he got put on last April, so he has not even done a full year yet.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So that's between him and Lieutenant Governor also has executive experience. It's a different administration for sure.
Yeah, and the last time we had a mayor in administration, well, that's not really back up. The last time we had a mayor in a high-end administration regarding Lieutenant Governor was Tim Murray, and even then he wasn't a strong mayor. He wasn't elected by the public. He was a part of a strong council mayor,
Right.
where council chooses the mayor was elected in Worcester. I don't remember right now.
I'm not sure either, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird election how they do mayors in Worcester, but it's strong council. So Revere is a strong mayor like Quincy, and he had a charge into headlong stuff, and he was a COVID mayor too.
That's true. Yep. So there's that unique experience for sure. Closer to home, we lost a mainstay on House Neck, right, in Harold Crowley.
Actually, Germantown.
Oh, Germantown, right.
Yeah, actually, Harold is a Wollaston guy. He lived on Flag Street, up the street from me. And actually delivered newspapers to this home I'm in when he was in high school, the Patriot
Wow.
Life. So Harold passed away this week, and Harold, for kids in Germantown in particular, know Harold Crowley. He always spoke very fondly to me on Germantown in particular, and the kids and the challenges there. He actually taught at school at the same time the speaker did down this time. And he also taught at Broad Meadows. So a lot of House Neck folks, Germantown folks, Adam Sher folks have counted Howard, particularly in my age bracket, because he retired in 1994. And I met Harold through Kids Vote. When I worked in Michael Morris's office, he brought me along to learn about kids voting, which was a project to encourage kids to vote, learn about candidates, learn about political process at different educational levels, and also try and get the parents to participate on voting day, which actually was very successful. And unfortunately, this program did not survive, definitely. Harold is one that made it work. But, big union person, teachers union in particular, very supportive unions, very supportive of education to have more flexibility and understanding than just teaching to a test. Very well read, very well educated. Northeastern, when those co-op, when you could just school and work. Was in the military. but most importantly, he's one of those guys that always taught me how things got done at the community level, and taught me some fun political races and some friendly and unfriendly situations in the city regarding trying to get some stuff done. Very passionate about the Thomas Crane Library, and um, even before I got into running for office, we talked a lot about what's going on here and what people did right and did wrong in the past as he observed it. And again, he was never afraid to tell it how it is, and like it or not, and that's always very appreciative. And when I did run for office, I was very important mentoring associated with Harold about what to do. And a lot of elected officials in the city went to Harold Crawley, not necessarily looking for his support, but more importantly, to get some guidance about, how to run for office, because he's been working on campaigns, since before Michael Morrissey was elected. Let's put this in perspective. So he worked for Morrissey's opponent, Rep. Joe Brett back in the day. It was a Jim with Joe, I think it was Joe. And talk about times and change and, how we need to be better for each other and to each other, as opposed to, being too greedy in the world. You should live to the means you're trying to live to, not to hoard things you don't need. And he lived in the same house since he moved to Quincy with his parents. He took care of his parents right up to when they were 100.
Wow.
So I'm going to miss Harold, Mrs. T, Mrs. Pipe. Gonna miss both, but most importantly, I'm going to miss his guidance that I really, really appreciated over many years, and I'm sure many folks in my age-ish or a little bit older that went to Snug Harbor and Broad Meadows,
Yeah.
or was a scout down there, would remember Harold. And he's a hands-on teacher. I mean, he's like, field trips are important. Bringing stuff to a classroom to show kids what it is important. Changes how kids learn, not just reading a book or watching a YouTube.
Oh yeah, it's a very formidable years for sure that stick with you for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. So his wake is tomorrow, and the celebration of life is on Saturday. So yeah, no, as you can tell, I'm very sad about this, very bummed out. But he achieved a lot, done a lot, and most of us can only hope to live his full life.
Sure. Maybe some state issues, Tech, we should talk about. The situation with the migrant crisis just unfolding today, actually, with the new Melnea Recreation Center being used now as a shelter.
Yeah, actually, the DCR commission brought this up as well. I mean, he's run into some issues regarding some of his own government buildings regarding using a shelter to try to use it all transitional. And this is going to be really tough as we're trying to figure this out. The governor's constantly shuffling folks around. State Commonwealth, she stated that we were able to get some work permits for these folks at the federal level. But, I remind folks about nearly half the people in shelters are not migrants to Massachusetts residents. Again, I use different indicators about where the economy is going. I use people calling about unemployment, people calling about food stamps, people calling about shelter, people calling for housing assistance, fuel assistance is my gauge. And you do this long enough and you pay attention to the number of phone calls, you can kind of sense where the local economy is going. So people forget we've had this before. It was during the financial crisis. For 5 years, we were putting people in hotels. And we had to ramp up the MSRVP, which is the equivalent of a Section 8 voucher, to get people out of hotels, despite the fact that, it's still a housing crunch. Problem is that migrants can't qualify for Section 8 or MSVP or public housing. They're not U.S. citizens and not permanent resident. So this is actually really a compounded problem where they cannot qualify for what we normally do is try to get people from a temporary shelter to a Section 8 or MSRVP or some kind of public housing or other similar types of semi-permanent housing, which only U.S. citizens and permanent residents are allowed to have. So this is a real problem.
Yeah, that's why they were sleeping on the floor at Logan Airport.
Yeah, this is a problem because a normal avenue of recourse to address this issue is not available for them. Refugees are a little bit different. Since they're federal government, they also do not apply for Section 8s because they're refugees, not permanent residents. They don't apply, they don't qualify for other similar issues. But at least the federal government has a program specifically to assist them on housing transition. There is no current program on the federal level for migrants, and our normal solution of how to address temporary housing problems is not available in this situation.
Yeah.
Mm. This is again back to the work permit problem that if they can't make money, they can't get housing, and housing I know is limited. So this is a real conundrum for folks to try to sort out. And I do expect that, as we are among the highest housing prices in the greater Boston area. And we talked about this multiple times about inflation and people's dollars being crunched on being able to spend things, especially necessities. It's going to get more challenged. So I do expect the administration is going to continue to have to do somewhat continuous shuffling as they try to figure this out. But like I said at the beginning, the normal resolutions we've had that we used during the '08 financial crisis, where we were almost at $1 billion in the shelter crisis. We had to open up more RSVPs as a solution to try to relieve the temporary shelter issue, and then we actually emptied the temporary shelters out by 2017. So this is the conundrum that we're kind of in, and I know the public only looks at the sausage, not how the sausage is being made, and I get that, but there are constraints on some of the solutions we can use for Massachusetts residents that are citizens, permanent resident holders, but they're not available recourse for migrants.
Yeah, I think that's good to point out because folks that do qualify for those programs that are citizens are being taken care of.
We're trying our best. The problem again is a shortage of everything.
Well, right, yeah.
So the migrants are contributing to some of the temporary shelter problem, but the permanent resolution regarding RSVP, the government feds haven't changed Section 8 in like forever. It's all and public housing is very full, and and all that. I recognize that. I truly do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a two-front battle. On one front side, we're dealing with trying to get people in temporary, which administration is very committed to make sure people can get into temporary. But at the same time, though, we still have to address the housing crisis on the other end, and Ed Augustus is trying to solve that. And I think again that the economy is not going to be a conventional so-called recession. I think it's going to be more of a price crunch against residents who can't pay to make ends meet.
Yeah. Another crisis, I guess, if you will, or issue is the whole issue with Steward Healthcare that cropped up earlier this week, and how that might impact the state healthcare system.
We're already short community hospitals. I think it's no secret to people in Quincy. And the collapse of more community hospitals results not necessarily just emerge from access, but also general healthcare, both on essential and not critical healthcare, as I like to call it. There's no such thing as non-essential healthcare.
Right. Yeah.
Now I need, and then we can hang on for a while before I have to address, but still, right? Levels of prioritization given different circumstances. Kearney, of course, is a big issue for us down here in Quincy because you have South Shore, Kearney, Milton, and of course Boston Medical Center is the surrounding hospitals. And Kearney going down, that would be a real problem. If we had Quincy Hospital and Kearney went down, that's actually not that terrible. I know it sounds to put it that way, but because of the catch basin of the net of geography, you could actually kind of make that work. So I'm not sure what the administration is going to do and what DPH is going to do. Everyone's kind of flat-footed. And Steward is a for-profit hospital. And just like know, the majority of the country is for-profit hospitals. But not
really?
It's really kind of a Northeast thing. Yeah. If you look around, most of the country is for-profit.
But Steward is based, in Dallas, Texas, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the for-profit model is challenging in Massachusetts. It doesn't work as well as it does in other states. And hospitals like Steward is built on the concept of universal health care. I was telling some friends, these investors sometimes prefer a fixed income
Mhm.
versus rapid income, meaning that their investments in the businesses result in steady revenue, so they can pay their debt, and return to shareholders their risk of the money that went in, as opposed to quick hits like flipping a house. I put
Right.
money in, get like 800% profit, and take our cuts and get out. It
Right.
doesn't work your way, but universal healthcare is supposed to create that stream. It hasn't really worked out that way
No,
because
it
we
does
never
not.
want to. No, we don't have true universal healthcare, and for-profit hospitals would do very well under universal healthcare because private investors would be more interested in steady revenue than quick hit revenue. And we have this kind of like hybrid-ish system between basically what Obamacare is now. So rising hospital costs, COVID impacts are still rippling through the hospital system on revenue losses, and reimbursement rates are challenged. And the feds are still dealing with Medicare. And places like Kearney Hospital, Brockton Hospital, they're very much driven by Mass Health, Medicare,
Mhm.
uh, and the reimbursement rates are terrible. As a result, they have to eat a lot of those costs. It's not like 100% of your healthcare is actually covered by Medicare, Medicaid. The hospital picks up a share.
Right.
Share can be high as 40 to 60%.
Yeah, and going up too. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of it as well. So it's a lot of moving parts. I wish it was simple in saying is that big corporate greed. It's more than just that. It's a lot of factors. Of course, paying the shareholders is part of that, but there's a lot of other factors involved in the situation. And I think we won't really know the whole story until more is reviewed, whether it be in the courtroom or DPH diving in to see what's happening.
Yeah, I think there's a hearing this week, if I think today, maybe even to at least start the process. But I mean, they employ like, I don't know, 20,000 people too across the state. So there's an impact there as well.
And there's also a ripple effect because it affects doctors groups. It affects medical suppliers and food suppliers and linen suppliers and uniform suppliers. Affects office supplies. I mean, hospitals are economic engines. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll give you an example. I mean, Springfield, one of the major employers is the hospital, and
Mhm.
friends in Springfield, would be devastated not just because they would lose a hospital in a very large geographic area that doesn't have a hospital beyond Springfield, but also, it's the biggest single employer and economic engine driver for other businesses around it.
Oh, it's the same on the Cape. Cape Cod Hospital is probably, if not the largest, one of the largest employers down there. That's not part of the Steward Network, but it's same example.
Yeah, and I'm aware the speakers, always had a very strong, very, lots of concerns about the hospital system, especially community hospitals. And I'm aware that John Lawn, who shares sorry, as you can tell, I'm starting a little tired. Healthcare finance, has been working on trying to solve this issue, but it's not like half, one bill and here's some money thrown at it solves the problem. There's so many different components to this issue. It's not really easy. And healthcare has changed again, as you all know, post COVID, how we do healthcare has changed a lot. And patient care expectations have changed.
We're gonna let you go early, Tacky, because you're not feeling well, but you want to talk about your newsletter?
Yeah, we've had this question come up to the office every so often. Do I do a monthly newsletter? And the answer is yes. But it's through the HouseNet Community Council. So HouseNet Community Council is a neighborhood association, neighborhood group that does a lot of very important and great activities out in HouseNet. But HouseNet members, Community Council members, you sign up for a membership. I don't remember what it is now off the top of my head, but I think it's like $20. You get a monthly newsletter sent about HouseNet activities. It is printed paper. It is hand folded by the members and stamped. And Councillor McCarthy obviously represents Ward 1. So he has a page or a half a page, and I get a half a page to give some insights about what's going on in government. And like this show, we talk about a lot. I talk about a lot of stuff that you won't see in the news. It won't be in the Ledger. It won't be in the Herald. It won't be in the Globe. It won't be on the news about how things work and some little details about behind the scenes, so to speak. Um, and it's been useful. I've been doing it since I got elected in 2011, and only missed maybe 2 or 3 issues where I didn't write something in. And if people are interested in a newsletter and supporting one of the local associations in Quincy, this is actually not a bad way to do it. And I'm sure, actually, I'm not sure. I know that a lot of former Neckers that have moved out of the city still contribute to the council this way. So, something that you guys can consider, helping someone local, as well as getting some insight from me on things that you won't read in local papers.
Okay, yeah. So contact the HouseNet Community Council and become a member and get your newsletter.
They have a website. They have a Facebook page is very, very active, and I'm sure that they're more than happy to provide you a copy.
Excellent. Well, they do a lot of great things in the community. I know Chowderfest is coming up. They do, I think, a Chili Fest. They do, all kinds of things over the summertime as well. So it's a great group of folks.
Yeah, a lot of folks like, the HouseNet Congregational Church and, the HouseNet Garden Club, they're all kind of a lot of the same people. They're all working the same thing with the council. So it's kind of one of those things where there's some degree of cross-pollination, sort of. It's a close-knit community, so it's unavoidable. You're not participating in one organization down there. You're also participating with another one at the same time. And
Right.
I won't lie, I sometimes get confused myself because you see a lot of the same people, very great and good people doing multiple things in multiple organizations down there. So, but yeah, it's regardless, it's all one really good community that cares about each other and tries to move forward on things that helps the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Not a bad thing. It's certainly what makes a community a livable place.
And Chili Fest is Saturday.
Oh, is it? Okay, there you go.
1 to 4, Chili Fest Saturday. They have professionals and home cooks up. If you like chili, HouseNet Congregational Church in the basement from 1 to 4. Go down and if you want to get a hot sampling of chili, probably got about 30-ish folks. And vote to give someone bragging rights for this year. So, definitely an idea of an activity that will keep you nice and warm on likely another cold weekend.
Yeah, it sounds like you could use a good cup of hot chili yourself, Techie.
Well, regretfully, my various food problems, my allergy problems prohibit me from eating this very good smelling stuff down there. But I might make myself some chili at some point.
Or at least some hot pepper to clear your sinuses.
Yeah, I think some cayenne's going to be required to flush out this voice I'm having today.
Well, I hope you're feeling better, but let's get your contact information out there.
617-722-2370. 617-722-2370 is the phone number. tackey.cha at masshouse.gov, tackey.chan@mahouse.gov. Getting emails as we're closing during Route 10. I'm getting a lot of emails as people are trying to advocate for their bills before the committee reports. And then you have State Representative Tackey Chan Facebook, which you commented earlier about pictures of me being places, as well as tackeychan.org. There's some information there on references, as well as at Tackey Chan, which is the social media page. We're actually doing some posts on DCR looking for hires. So we do stuff like that too. We get requests from other government agencies to put out notices of police exams and DCR hires and other opportunities. And of course, MAlegislature.gov. You actually don't have to call me to find the bill now. It's all on the internet. And by the way, that stuff is up to date as soon as something happens. It isn't like there's a time delay. You can call me and find out. I love when people call me. So it's on the website. It says this. So what happened? Where is it really? I'm like, there is no really anything. I use the same resource you do on finding a bill. So MAlegislature.gov, great resource. And of course, here with QATV on your favorite podcast with Joe. And definitely catch Joe in the morning for his 10-minute update on local news.
Thanks, Techie. Always good to talk to you. Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you, Joe. See you in a week's time.